So tonight I want to welcome our guest David Harris, and he is he's not just someone who's a friend, and I've known him for a number of years, but he is a coding bootcamp graduate. He's self-taught, did a coding bootcamp, became a software engineer without a computer science degree at a very reputable healthcare startup in San Francisco. And he graciously agreed to join and share a little bit about his path and his experience going through the job search. And in the process of me speaking to him and Ruben speaking to him, he actually agreed to do a number of these workshops. So tonight is going to be just an introduction. And depending on people's questions, what people are more interested in, David actually agreed to do follow-up once a week workshops to help people prepare for the job search and actually like ask questions in more detail. I think the problem today is that everyone says go out and network or go out and meet people in tech, but that doesn't give you actionable next steps. And most people are just lost on what to do and how to do it. So later on the call, we're also going to share the email templates you could use as you're reaching out to tech insiders. But before we jump into all of the job search stuff, I want to just say welcome, David, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Timur. Appreciate the kind words, and I'm really excited to be here and get to speak with all of you guys.
Yeah, you too, man. And I know you have a special kind of story of how you found out about Career Karma and how you even decided to move out to San Francisco. Can you share with everyone a little bit about your relationship to Career Karma and also kind of where you are now and how you got there?
Absolutely. So one thing that you guys may not know is if you guys know Ruben Harris, who's the CEO of Career Karma, he's actually my brother. So and what was the second part? Like how I got started?
Yeah, how did you get started? Because I know you started this journey 3 years ago or about that time ago.
Around that time.
Yeah, how did you get started? What got you interested in tech, and then what steps did you take to get your job?
Yeah, so I started getting interested in programming around 2 or 3 years ago. I've always really been interested in math my whole life. I grew up in Atlanta, and so for all the East Coast people, I always knew I wanted to do something related with math as a career, but I never knew exactly what that career would be. And where I grew up back at home, I wasn't really exposed to programming I didn't even know what the term software engineer was until like 2 years ago. But when I got to college, I figured I would start majoring in math to see, expose me to different classes and maybe different careers that are related to it. And from there, around my senior year, I met a lot of friends who were computer science majors, and they told me I should take a programming class just to see what I think about it. And so since I was graduating, I didn't want to take anything super hard. So I was like, okay, what's the easiest programming class I can find? And it was a class called the Intro to Web Development. And it was very simple. I don't know how far everybody is in their engineer journey, but it was just HTML, CSS, super basic stuff. But the feeling of empowerment when I could just write like an H1 tag and see some text appear on the screen was like amazing to me. And the fact that I could start learning how to solve problems to create unique experiences that could help people was something that was like life-changing for me. And I found that I was enjoying it more than my math classes. So that's kind of where I started getting my start into programming.
And I know it took you a number of years to actually then decide to pursue it as a career.
Mm-hmm.
What was that moment that got you like, or can you take us back to the moment when you kind of realized like, I know I don't have a degree in computer science, but I want to actually become a software developer?
Yeah, great question. So when I was graduating, this was back in 2017, I was kind of well, actually kind of before that, around my senior year, that was when Archer, Timur, and Ruben were actually starting a podcast called Breaking into Startups, which if you guys haven't heard of it, I strongly recommend it. It's really great. And I have an episode on there if you guys want to check it out. And because of that, they were um, blowing up in tech. Archer and Timur were working as engineers, and Ruben recommended that I should get into programming. And to kind of make me start doing that push, he basically signed me up for a subscription that was called Team Treehouse as a Christmas present. He's like, I'm paying for this subscription.
It was
You
like
have to,
$10 a month, right? But
yeah,
it gave you like
it
a
might have been more actually,
yeah,
but yeah,
yeah. I remember starting on Treehouse too.
yeah.
It's a great starting point.
Yeah, and I think Treehouse is really what got me more excited because I just love the way those guys taught, and they were showing you like examples of what your finished projects could be when you completed it. Honestly, I might get a subscription again because there's still a lot of great stuff on there that I don't know about. But yeah, I basically started making like a basic profile page using the program, and I found that I was having a lot more fun in it because basically what I would do was, since I was in school, I would still do my classes, but maybe like on Sundays I would spend like an hour or two going through Treehouse, and I was having a lot of fun with it. That since I didn't really have any direction in where I wanted to go with my math degree anyway, I figured, all right, I'm gonna graduate in like 2 months. I'm gonna go back to my parents' house in Georgia. Let me just spend the summer really focused on programming and see if I like it. And so when I graduated in May, I spent pretty much like June, May to July doing courses on Team Treehouse about 8 hours a day, and I loved it. But I didn't really know how to make that next transition to become an engineer because like I didn't have a computer science degree. This is before Career Karma, so
Yeah.
but
Can you give people a sense of a timeline? So you graduated school in May of what was it, 2017?
17. Yep.
And then you spent that summer on Team Treehouse.
Yep.
Can you give people a timeline of like, I know you did a coding boot camp and then you got your job. Can you and you did the job search. Can you give people a rough timeline of like how long it took you to go through each phase?
Okay.
So people kind of start seeing like how to structure these career transitions, because for most people, it's not just about, hey, I'm gonna start a boot camp. There's a period of time before you do a boot camp. There's also a period of like, you're considering, should you just go on your own and study? Should you do a boot camp? So can you take people through those like phases that you went through? And then ultimately, how long did it take you to get your first job?
Yep. So the consideration phase was around in March of 2017, like probably halfway through the second semester of my senior year. So I would say from March till May, 2 or 3 months, I was kind of deciding if I should do it. When I graduated was when I decided that I wanted to take it seriously. And so around that time was when I heard about programming boot camps. And so I decided I wanted to get into a programming boot camp. And so I spent from May to September studying really hard to try to get into App Academy and Hack Reactor, which were at the time were two of the more popular boot camps to try to get into. And so it took me about 4 months of study. I got accepted into App Academy. And so that was in September of 2017. And then since that was in San Francisco, I would have to move out here because I was still in Georgia. My brother Archer and Timur were already living here, so they allowed me graciously to crash at their place. And so from September, so I got accepted. I had an interview in September for App Academy, and I got accepted in October. So from October to December, I was just studying to prepare for App Academy because I was starting in December 2017. So I started in December, and then from December to March is when I did App Academy of 2018, so last year. And then from March to August was how long it took me to get a job, so that's about 5 months. So in total, if you start like from when I decided to take it seriously, which was like May, It was about a year and 2 or 3 months
Hmm.
from
Got
like
it.
knowing very little of nothing to where I am.
Yeah. And what was your like what do you do now? And because we're gonna unpack it in the Q&A, and I'm gonna share. I think I shared the episode to your podcast episode where people can hear all of the steps that led you to getting your first job. But can you describe to people like where do you work now? What do you do? Like what does a software engineer do for a living?
Yeah. So I'm a software engineer at a company called Omada Health. We're based here in San Francisco. We actually just opened an office in Atlanta. So if anyone's in Atlanta, um, you should reach out. It's a great company. But yeah, so Omada Health is a healthcare company. We target chronic illness, which is basically illnesses that can't be treated by medicine. It can only really be treated by having a healthy lifestyle, which is diets and exercises. So a couple of illnesses that fall into that category would be type 2 diabetes and hypertension. And so if you're at risk of those two particular chronic illnesses, you can sign up for our program, and we send you this scale that you can step on that will calculate some data like your weight and height. And that information will be sent to health coaches who will try to set up a routine of like some healthy lifestyle for you to improve over like a 6 month to a year program. And a lot of people at the very least lose a ton of weight. And some people who are at risk of those illnesses stop being at risk. So I work on the web app for that program.
Hmm. And what is a like? Can you break down like what do you mean by a web app, and what does
Mhm.
your day to day look like?
Yeah. So the stack for people who are already in boot camps and job searching is Ruby on Rails in the back end. And so that's Ruby based framework, and React and Redux on the front end.
Hmm.
So that's a JavaScript based framework. And so I'm a full stack engineer, which means I work on both sides. So for people who might not know what back end and front end are, you can think of back end. Well, you can think of the front end as the things that you see when you're on um, any website or things that you interact with. And you can think of the back end as what happens when you interact with the website. So if I'm on Facebook, for example, and I want to write a status that says, "Hey guys," and I click post, how does that guarantee that everybody will see my post? How does it guarantee that when I log into Facebook, that it'll be me versus Timur or anyone else? So those kinds of things are the back end. But I do everything, but I prefer the front end.
Yeah.
Um, you're asking about the day to day.
No, that's a great description. Like, I mean, I think you explained it well. Like, you're a full stack developer, and I'm sure people have a lot of questions that they'll ask you um,
Mhm.
in terms of you getting this job. Just to kind of open up, give people things to ask you about, because this is a job search AMA. Uh,
Yep.
what were some of the things that you found the most helpful going through this job search and becoming a developer?
hmm Um, I think, well, one, listening to my brother and you guys, because at first I was a little kind of stubborn and wanted to try to do my own path of applying to get jobs, which was just sending applications online to a company's website, which can work. But in my opinion, what was more beneficial was directly emailing people. So
Mhm.
what I would do is, I can tell you how I got my job. So Omada, I use a Chrome extension that's called Clearbit Connect. And if you guys want to ask me more about that, I'm happy to talk about that for a while. And what it does is basically, if it's a little creepy, but it's very useful. What it does is you can type in a company and it'll show you like a list of the top people there. So like the CEO, the CTO. And if you click on each one of their names, it'll show you like their email, their LinkedIn, their Twitter, maybe, sometimes Facebook, but obviously I wouldn't go there. But so what I would do was I would use Clearbit to find, like, let's say the CEO. That's what I did for Omada. I emailed the CEO saying like, hey, I've heard a lot of great things about Omada. I'm a software engineer who does X, Y, and Z. I have a template that we'll send out later about that. But essentially, I sent him an email. He didn't answer me. Then I emailed the CTO. He didn't answer me. then I emailed the VP of engineering. She answered me. And so I just said, hey, I'd love to meet for coffee and talk. And she agreed, and we met for coffee. And I think one of the best skills that I learned was you want to, in addition to emailing people, you don't want to just be like, hey, give me a job. Like, you want to like tell them about yourself, tell them, make sure in your email that you explain why you're interested in the company, because for all they know, you're just someone who's spamming them and don't really care. So make sure to do your research. For example, I was just like, hey, I saw that Omada got their Series C round. Like, I've been following you guys and you helped this X amount of people. So they're like, wow, you did your research. And those kinds of things stick out rather than just sending an application online or, um, you know. So anyway, so that's the first skill. The second thing would be when you actually meet for them for coffee. That's also a pretty big skill. What I would usually do to kind of like take off that pressure, because, you're like, oh man, this person doesn't know me, but I'm the one who has to kind of carry this conversation because I'm taking their time. Is what I would do was first I would start out with asking how their weekend was, and they would tell me something. Obviously, they're going to ask me the same thing because that's how conversations work. And then what I would basically say something that I would do on my weekend to tie in why I'm interested in their company. And so then so I might say like, they asked me how my weekend is. I was like, oh, I was a little sick this weekend, but I've been recovering pretty well. And one thing I really like about Omada is that you guys also help people who are sick in their own way. And and so I would start talking about the company, and then using that transition, I would then tell them about myself. And basically, there's something, at least at my boot camp, which I'm sure they do at other boot camps, that's called a personal pitch, which is when you tell people about yourself that well, kind of like you want to tell something that's like compelling and ties into why you want to be an engineer and why you're interested in doing what you do and how you can be of value to this company. So, for example, what I said was, um, I really like what you guys do at Omada. In fact, my dad is an oncologist. He treats people with cancer. And even though I never knew that I knew I never wanted to be a doctor, I always knew that I wanted to do something, use my skills of math or programming to help people in a big way. So what I love about getting to know more about Omada is that I get the best of both worlds of helping people in the medical field, but also using my skills to help thousands of people versus one person kind of one-on-one. And getting to learn more about Omada and what you do is such an exciting opportunity. So I appreciate you taking my time. Something like that. So like showing that you have like a connection to them and not just like, I just want you to do something for me, I think speaks volumes.
Yeah, and this is a perfect segue into the Q&A. And thank you so much for providing specific examples of how do you open the conversation, how do you build that connection. I think in a nutshell, your technical skills account for about 50% of things that will help you get a job.
Yep.
And then the rest of the other 50% is going to be your non-technical things, like being able to being able to tell them about yourself in a way that makes sense to whoever's interviewing you, uh, being able to communicate to them that you're someone who has the skills, so you're making them feel like you're confident in your abilities and you would get the job done. And the other one, and what I just described about like 50% skill, probably 15% or 20% just working on your story and your pitch. The other 30% is just like following the sales process, because in the job search you're selling yourself, and often the people who get the job the quickest and people who make the most are not the people who are the best developers. They're the people who are just hustling. They're the people who have high activity rate, not in just applying online, but by reaching out to people, building these relationships. And you only need one job to get hired. So the more of
Absolutely.
that you can do, the faster you'll get to that finish line. And so I want to set the stage for the Q&A. We have about 40 minutes left on this call. And so we'll get to answer a lot of questions. Please unmute yourself and ask our guest questions about the job search or his experience learning how to code. Also, feel free to introduce yourself and give us like a 30-second pitch about yourself, where you're coming from, if you're in the job search.
Yeah, you can practice with me.
Yeah. And let's get started. Who wants to go first?
Me, Michael
Okay,
Randazzo.
welcome.
Hi, Michael.
Hi, nice to meet you guys. So I'm a college sophomore. I'm learning, and I've done classes in C++, C Sharp, and now I'm doing Java and the rest C++, but I'm mainly focusing on Java. So my question was, do I really have to go to a boot camp after college? Because, you know, my loans are getting expensive, and I'm thinking that, like, I'm very disciplined enough to do the self-learning on my own. So I was wondering what you guys think on that.
Yeah, that's a great question.
By the way, I wanted to learn. I'm most interested in learning back-end languages like COBOL and languages that are for app development, like Java makes Android, Swift makes Apple.
Yep.
That's my mindset right now. But I wanted to learn the programming first.
Yeah, that's actually you brought up one thing I was just about to say. Java is really good for Android development if you're interested in
Well,
that.
Java I know runs on anything, but I don't know Android apps do use Java. Swift is only Apple.
Right. To answer your question, I think having a computer science degree is plenty fine. Especially if you say like what you said, you're motivated, and you're like just hungry to learn, you're fine. I mean, I don't know if there's a guy that his name is Patrick, who is someone who's like really a good friend of a lot of the CK staff. He didn't go to he went to college, but he didn't get a computer science degree, and he didn't go to a boot camp, and he just spent a number of months, or I don't know how long, studying on his own, and he got a job, and that pays very well. And so it's all, I think at the end of the day, it just comes down to how motivated and how hungry you are. For me personally, I would.
Something at school.
What's
They
that?
can't teach the full languages at school. That's what I've came across in my years of taking computer science, even in senior year of high school. They can't teach everything. That's why I think I'm best going for the self-learn route.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I didn't have to do with the loans, then I would go to a boot camp, but that would be very expensive.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, I think I'm just going to go for the self-learn route. I'm going to continue through college and do the self-learning at the same time to complement my skills. Maybe that would help me.
That sounds like a great plan,
I
man.
want to just add that like the goal of Career Karma is to help people get a job in tech as soon as possible, right? And so what that means, and if you think about it, there's a lot of pathways that people take to get jobs in tech. There's the traditional path of going to college and studying computer science. For most of the people in Career Karma, that's not really an option to go back for 4 years of college. I think, Michael, you're in a position where you're lucky that you're a sophomore, so like you have a lot of time. And in that case, the best advice I would give you is make sure you have a portfolio of projects, right? It doesn't matter if you're coding bootcamp, self-teaching route, or college. Your employers care about what you can do and what you can build. The great thing about coding bootcamps, and I did a coding bootcamp in 2015 too, is they basically give you a shortcut. So if you need to have a portfolio of projects for you to go into the job search, they just get you there faster, okay? At the same time, there are also options like Free Code Camp. There's other options out there. What people should take into consideration is how much time is it going to take you to go the self-paced route, route, or the other option. Um, I'm gonna mute everyone just for 1 sec, just so we can hear each other. And once you look at the timeline and the roadmap, for the point of a coding bootcamp is it can get you there a lot quicker, but there's also things that you have to take into consideration, like your schedule. Some people, if you want to work part-time, you can do a full-time boot camp. If you want to work full-time, you can do a part-time boot camp, and you can get into a job in 10 months, in about 10 months to 12 months. But if someone is like, I'm a firefighter and I can only work during certain hours, it's still possible. You're still going to get there. It just might take you a year and a half or 2 years versus 6 or 12 months.
Also, two last things. One, I'm only on Credit Karma because I saw an ad for on Career Karma, not to mix it up. Sorry about that. I saw an ad for it on Instagram.
Yeah.
But my last question is, like, do you know any boot camps? Because you said some are part-time, some are full-time.
Mm-hmm.
So do you know any part-time boot camps that have online courses and would be affordable, considering I also have loans to pay off after graduation?
Yeah. So what I would say is, for people who are on the call, so I would say you kind of want to pick one or the other option. Either you pick the college route and then you just go study in school and go self-paced, or you go the coding bootcamp route, and then there's
I'm already in the college route, so I'll just stay.
There's Flatiron, part-time online. There's Thinkful. There's General Assembly, Lambda.
Don't some of these have free online courses, like free try it now, like try courses online?
So there are courses like App Academy Open that has their stuff online for free, and you can just go through that material. So
Okay.
I would look at that, Michael. And I think the best part about coding bootcamps, and the way David and I actually got into tech, is we did coding bootcamps, but we didn't have to pay for them until we were actually working in tech. And so again, there's still financial obligation involved, but it's an opportunity for people who don't want to go to college to go and do that. If you are in college, then just stick with college and just learn on your own. Okay?
Yeah, because I really wanted to go to the boot camps, but the loans, man.
Yeah, no problem, Michael.
Anyway, thank you for your help.
Yeah, thanks for asking your questions, and welcome to the community. Let's hear other questions about the job search or anything else.
I just wanted to jump in real quick. I don't want to bash what the last comment was made about college, but I keep hearing it coming up in reference to boot camps. And I think, well, my name is Wilfred. I'm in a boot camp. I go to Lambda School. I take UX design. I'm on a Career Karma app. My thing about the college is, I think college is like, when I went to college, it was like several years ago. Not to give my age away, it was like 10 years ago, right? I went to college for liberal arts, right? Yeah. Borderline humanities. And even back then, marketing, business majors, MBA majors that weren't on Wall Street, because I interned on Wall Street before I went to college, what they was learning was like 25 years out of date. It was so dated. And that's the thing. I think college, I'm not sure, but I'm sure if we look at the syllabus of computer science, man, not to be, facetious, I'm pretty sure these guys are still doing BASIC and Pascal. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're not even up to anything practical right now. And beyond, so I think people are using college as that old tradition, but I think the boot camps really are the future. And I always tell people, you can't stand in the way of progress. So just get out of the way. There's not really a right or wrong. It's just, do you want to be where the action is at, or do you want to have a back seat? Do you want to be the guy sitting there with a degree and people that did a boot camp are walking past you because they have jobs at that company already? Or do you want to be the guy with a degree sitting there trying to get the job 4 years after these guys have seniority over you because they have done the applied work in the real world? And that's what it's always been about. College, the thing about college for me, the professors know nothing about the work because they've never been in the workforce. They did their thesis and went right to teaching. They never had a job. They never pitched. They never cold pitched. They never did anything. Sat down, shook hands with anybody. But enough about that. I was just gonna talk about the job search. So myself, I'm starting my job search right now. Part of my job search is building a portfolio. And thank you, David. And the reason why I started my job search right now is because I realized that a lot of the requirements say a year or two. And I said, well, shoot, if I'm going to be in Lambda school for 9 months, right, I can apply that experience, but I can still be making connections right now so that after I have my year and at least people know I'm on the radar, they've seen me talk to them 6 months ago. And now I'm like, hey, I'm ready, you know, I'm here, I'm back, you know, that repetition. So my question would be, for the job search, what is a good way to make yourself competitive? Like, I know when I roll out, I got a bunch of people from Lambda School, and we're pretty much all kind of like cookie cutter. You know, we're all learning the same applied ways of doing it. So how can I make myself stand out a little bit more than the people in my cohort and the people that have finished before me? That's it.
No, great question.
Yeah.
So I want to ask a clarifying question. Is it while you're still finishing up your boot camp or after?
Oh, it's after. So like I'm
Okay.
at a Lambda school. I'm on the block with people from my cohort, and then there's still people that have finished before me that have already been in their search maybe like an extra 3 months, you know.
So there's two things that I'm thinking in my mind, but the first one, this is another question. Sorry. Does your boot camp have like a demo showcase or anything like that where you show off projects?
Yes, they do. We haven't had I'm not sure about the UX one because so like the devs is really the core. So from what I've seen so far, it's mainly for the developers. I haven't seen much of like the UX. What they do is we just get on Figma and they show the port, and I'm like, okay, that's that's not really, you know, what I want to know. But
Right.
yeah, so no, we don't have one for us. We don't have one for us.
Gotcha. Okay, let's scratch that comment. But the second thing I would say is that, I mean, this is the one thing I learned quickly in my job search is you're competing against everyone. You're competing against everyone in your cohort. You're competing against everyone in your previous cohorts. You're competing against everyone in the future cohorts. You're competing against people who are all over different boot camps in the country. So,
or just people who need a job, right? People who need
yeah.
a UX job.
So that's why I said earlier, like, if you're just sending an application online, look, I can tell you from perspective, at Omada, we have like stacks. So like, even if you are good, there's hundreds of other good people too. So they might not even get to your letter before they get to someone else, you know? So when you email someone, it makes a big difference. I can tell you from personal experience on the other side, people have sent me email. I check my email like literally every single hour. It's kind of bad. I'm kind of obsessive with my email.
I think most people do that.
Yeah. And so because of that, if someone sends me an email saying, hey, David, how you doing? Or like, I went to App Academy or something, that's going to immediately get my attention. Because I'm like, wow, someone is in the job search. And there are so many people they could have reached out to want to get to know, and they chose me. That means a lot to me. So when you are reaching out, or when you send an email to someone, it's like, it's very personal and you make that person feel special. And because of that, I feel like you get a lot more, you stand out from other people who are just sending applications in the stack. Like just someone sending me an email wants me at the very least set up a time to meet them for lunch or coffee. So if you do that with multiple people, that helps a lot. And to add on to that, don't settle for just one person in a company. As I mentioned, I emailed the CEO, they didn't answer. I emailed the CEO, they didn't answer. I emailed the VP of engineering. And even if none of them answered, then what I would do is wait a couple of days. Email that person again, just saying, hey, I want to follow up on this. If they don't answer, wait 5 days and just keep doing that. At the very least, they're going to get so annoyed with you that they're either going to block you or they're going to respond to you. So doing that with multiple people of multiple companies, I got so many hits just doing that. And you might say, well, if you're emailing multiple people from the same company, won't they like all talk that like, hey, the same guy messaged both of me? It's possible, but I did that with like 300 companies and that never happened, or at least not vocally to me. So
Yeah. Let me just add to that. First of all, Dave, can you say the last number again? How many companies did you reach out to, or how many people did you email?
so I sent 600. Okay, yeah. Let me put it this way. I sent 600 something, maybe 700 applications. Right? From those 700, guess how many people responded for an interview?
Put your guesses in the chat. You
I'm
said
really
700
curious.
applications. Katie said 3, 2, 3, 10,
It
20.
was around 10, something like that. I sent 300-ish emails. Guess how many people responded to me?
Every single one.
Not every single one. I would probably say at least 80 of those 300 to 400 people responded to me.
So like about
I,
30%.
yeah, 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 would respond to me.
Yeah.
It makes a huge difference to do that. And I personally don't think I was the smartest person in my cohort. So, like Timur said earlier, that I would say someone even posted this in Slack at work. I would rather work with someone who is pretty good and is fun to work with than someone who's an absolute genius and the most annoying person to work with. People want to work with people they like working with. So as long as you're competent and you make yourself stand out, you get hits like nothing.
Yeah. Let me also break down, because like Ruben Archer and I, we've helped people over the last 5 years get into these into the tech roles. One of the biggest mistakes people make is they open up a job description and they take all of the bullet points on the job description literally. And what I mean by that is you might see a job description that says we need someone with 2 years of experience. And you know what you should do? You should still apply, right? Or you should still email them. Some job descriptions are gonna say we need someone with 4 years of experience or 5. And they might say you might be learning Ruby in your bootcamp, but they want to see Python. And what you should still do is still email the hiring manager, still email the CEO, and keep emailing them, right? Because job descriptions, they're nice to haves. They're like this ideal candidate, this unicorn candidate that doesn't exist. Because if that person existed, that job description would have been filled, right? And
Yep.
so, given the environment in the job search where there's so many companies that are looking to hire engineers, and there's not enough people coming out of colleges, companies need to companies not only have to adopt a new process for hiring. If they don't, and they only settle for people who have computer science degree, then they would never be able to hire. And so the first thing you need to do is see a job opening as an opportunity for you to see, like, okay, cool, I need to, like, this company is hiring for a role. Don't, if it says senior or junior or mid-level, doesn't really matter, they're hiring, right? The reason for that is in the back office, just like David was saying, from the insider's standpoint, if there's an opening at a company, they're getting a lot of resumes, they're getting a lot of applications online, there's a lot of noise, and as a recruiter, it's hard for you to see, like you said it yourself, Wilford, if there's like 100 people in your boot camp, there's thousands of people out there looking for jobs. How do you make yourself stand out? Well, you got to change the rules. You're not going to stand out by doing everything that everyone else is doing. The way you stand out is you take a shortcut by finding the person who is the decision maker and just sending them an email. In today's world, emails are the easiest thing to find. Usually just the person's first name at companydomain.com, or it's the first name dot last name at company domain, and now you have an open ticket to make a good impression. And David sent out 300 emails and he got 30% of them to respond. Let's say all those applications fell through. He still has tens of thousands of companies he could find and email. So until you stop, you have all these opportunities to hit up people, and eventually you'll turn those into on-sites and offers. So this is the easiest way to bypass the standard application process and start getting phone calls and interviews and things like that.
Yep. And two things I want to follow up with that. Oh, what's up?
I have a question. If phone conversations are the lead way that people are getting contacts, why do so many of these companies have online application systems that get piled high, miles high with applicants that they can never get through?
Yeah, Chris, that's a good question. So the reason companies still do it is that like the application process is inherently broken. So companies, they put up postings on their websites, and if you're someone who's in the job search, the easiest thing to do is actually submit your application on the company's website. But as a result, that also means that there are thousands of people or hundreds of people who are doing the same thing. And so it helps to submit on the website, and that process does work, let's say 20% of the time. And I do know people who have gotten jobs by submitting on the website. However, it's very hard to stand out. Plus, today there's these algorithms. So there's these tools that literally will scan hundreds of resumes at a time, looking for specific keywords on your resume. And if they don't see those keywords, that resume doesn't even get seen by the recruiter, who then decides, after looking at a resume for 10 seconds, whether or not you're gonna get a call back. And so those are the rules of the game today. Is like, if you want to go through the standard process, get lucky, submit your application, maybe the recruiter will pick up your application and you'll get through. What David is describing is bypassing the gatekeeper, which is the recruiter themselves, and going straight to the person who's actually hiring engineers. And
Yep.
if you can do that successfully, then you're just making a good impression on the person who will ultimately decide whether or not you're going to have a job. Plus, they would probably like the fact that you're someone who took the initiative to reach out to them directly versus just applying online. And so it's a win-win for everyone.
Yep.
Hey, David.
Hey.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask, what was the most complicated or hard part of your application process to applying and going to interviews? Because a lot of that, I know with the developers, you have technical interviews. So was it the non-technical interview part was the hard part, or the technical interview?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, short version, the technical part was harder.
Okay.
Long version, it depended on the company. I would say 9 times out of 10, I pretty much nailed the behavior side, because I practiced selling myself a lot. Like, I would literally just stand in the mirror and talk to myself, and then I would and talk to other people and have them critique how I did and stuff like that. So I could make people, I feel like for the most part, enjoy talking to me at the very least. When it came to the technical portion, so usually an interview has 3 stages. You'll have the behavioral person, when a recruiter will call you and they'll ask you to tell them about themselves. Then they'll have the technical interview, which typically is a phone call where you'll either have to solve some algorithm, which I usually did pretty well in because I got my degree in math, or you'd have to build something small on the spot, or usually not really build something on the spot. It might be like, here's some code and it's broken, like try to fix something or add this feature.
Fix a bug.
Yeah, fix a bug or add this code to an existing feature.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it was either that, and I usually did okay with either of those. What I did not great in that second stage was sometimes they would give you take home projects where you have to
Okay.
like do something for them. And the thing that I really hated about take home projects is that one, they give you like, let's say, X amount of days to do it, and you're interviewing with a bunch of other companies. So you have to like prioritize like how much do I care about this company to work on this thing, and or you spend a whole bunch of time working on it and you feel like, man, I nailed this thing so well, and then they just reject you anyway. You're like, wow, I could have spent all that time working on that project, emailing and interviewing with
Yeah.
companies. So I didn't really like that. And then the final stage is the on-site, when you actually go to the company's headquarters and
Okay.
interview. That one also varied a lot. I would say usually you would have like some other algorithm. You might have to build an app or something, and then they have something that's called system design, which is like whiteboarding the architecture of
Okay.
like some app. I usually didn't do super great at that, but I only had one system design interviews, so maybe that's why I didn't do super great at it. But I would say the most challenging was system design and the take-home projects.
Cool. Also, I got into General Assembly. I'm trying to get into Turing, which is in-person boot camp in Denver, which is probably one of the best boot camps in the US, to be honest, and it's nonprofit. I actually have MS. Yeah, I have MS, which is a chronic illness, but you need treatment for it because it's your brain. You have a lot of symptoms and stuff. So I would like to try to get into healthcare, to do software to help people with my same issues. And I also want to help people get into going to school to learn tech skills. So I told your brother about vocational rehabilitation, which I also told other people on our Zoom call initially who had it. And it's a way for people that they can go back to school through the government, through the state government, state per state. So if you have an illness or you're a veteran, you can get the state wherever you're in to pay for you to go back to school to learn a skill set to get you in the workforce.
That's awesome.
So yeah.
Katie,
So yeah.
what boot camp was this?
Oh, this is a program. This is not a boot camp. It's called vocational rehabilitation. What up?
Can you
It's called
put it in
vocational.
the chat so I remember it?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also,
Yeah. So I would like
I have
to.
okay, you finished.
Well, Katie, let's hear you out first.
Yeah, so I was just gonna say, no, so I want to get into to help people that have my issues as well, and then also just resources for people that have disabilities, because there aren't a lot of resources for them to get into tech. So that's what, when I found Career Karma, it was like a calling, because I've been doing this on my own for more than a year, for almost 2.
Yeah.
So
yeah, Katie, and I would say, if you listen to our podcast, we always talk about how to convert perceived disadvantages into advantages, right? There's a ton of healthcare startups out there, and it will take you some time to make a list of the top 300 or 500 companies that are in healthcare, that have funding, that are building interesting products, that have your interest too. And then you literally email people, and when you email them, don't be afraid to be like vulnerable and open for why you're reaching out to them, right? Because you actually have a great.
I was gonna ask about that too. Sorry, just because everyone, care teams, and we have support groups and everything too. They tell you not to say that you have your disease because you can be used against you.
Yeah. So what I would do, I think you want to kind of experiment, right? With the approach that David described, if you're reaching out to 300 companies, if you just reach out to the first 30 people, right, or the first 30 startups, see how they respond, right? And then try to tweak your email a little bit and send out 30 more and see how those go, right? And so the nice thing about sending out 300 emails is that you're not always going to have the same email, and it's going to evolve based on what you're seeing is working or not. But regardless, you always want to bake in like your story and the reason for why you're reaching out to them. And then the bigger that reason is, the more likely you're to get a response. One example is, if I was a veteran, and I'm sure there's always veterans on the calls. Veterans actually have at first it might seem like if you're a veteran, you might not have a computer science degree, or you might not have a lot of relevant experience in a tech field. But if you're a veteran, you can reach out to other veterans who do work in tech. And the way you build a connection is just by saying, hey, I saw that on LinkedIn that you're a veteran. I'm a veteran too, and I'm in the Navy or the Air Force. And I'm also an engineer now, so I want to learn more about your company. And the chance
Yes.
that another veteran responds to you is super, super high. So that's why you got to think about what are those commonalities that you can find with people or groups of people and go after them.
Yeah.
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 Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really good point that Timur made. I want that related to what I wanted to tell Wilfred earlier that I forgot. Leverage the network in your boot camp. I would email tons of App Academy graduates and I would get tons of meetings with them because they know what it's like to be in the job search and they want to help you out as well. And the other big thing that I forgot, and I won't go into detail because I know we don't have a lot of time, is try to go to a lot of meetups, like tech meetups and things like that, where you can
Yeah.
find engineers who are talking about really interesting things. For example, one that I really like in San Francisco is called Waffle JS, which is when people talk, different engineers from different companies talk about stuff related to JavaScript. And usually people who are speaking or even people in the audience work at a lot of companies you might be interested in. So just not being shy, talking to people, getting to know people is really helpful too.
I have a question.
Go for it.
How valuable was the hiring assistance that you got from App Academy?
That's a really interesting question. I could talk about that for a while, but I'll put it this way: it wasn't as helpful as I'd have liked it to be. I felt like they gave me a good foundation in terms of like the skills, obviously, but I felt like, well, this is what they did. They're basically like, I was required to send, I think, 20 applications a week or something, and I did that. I was required to like work on some new projects and show them stuff that I was doing. But like in terms of like helping me set up interviews with people, I didn't feel like they did a super great job. This was 2 years ago, so I don't know how it is now. But I've heard it's a lot better.
I'm a bit sick.
But at the time, I felt like I was kind of on my own a lot of the time. So that's kind of why I had to. And this is, like I said before, career karma. So it took a lot of work on my part.
Let me also add
All right,
that
thank you.
the stuff that David, and our team shares with you, it's stuff that actually works because we've gone through this. And it's also not the approach that you'll traditionally hear from your college counselors or people like your family members or friends who have gotten jobs the traditional way. The reality of things is that the same way how the tech space is changing, there's a lot of ways to do something the traditional way and be like everyone else, or you can just carve out your own path. And the nice thing is, if you start carving out your own path and you find out what your strengths are, you have a portfolio of projects, then sky is the limit. With the power of Twitter, the power of LinkedIn, the internet, you can literally find anyone online. You can find a way to connect with them. If it's not going to be through Twitter, you can try to find their email. If it's not going to be their email, you can probably find them on LinkedIn. If it's not going to be on LinkedIn, just message their coworker. There's hundreds of people that work at these companies. And so it's about taking initiative and taking ownership of your own job search. And coding boot camps, I would say they're a resource that helps you. It's an accelerator. It helps you get to somewhere faster. But regardless what you do, it's still you doing the work. It's you learning how to do coding problems. It's you learning how to sell yourself, and you applying to companies and emailing them. So never forget that. We have about 5 minutes. I want to be extremely respectful of people on the East Coast, especially because I know it's later than we usually have our AMAs at. Let's see. Let me ask David a question, because I think people assume that everyone is just amazing at these coding interviews the first time they go into that. And I can tell you for myself, I bombed horribly. Like, also looking back, embarrassingly, some of the basic questions that I was asked about JavaScript or CSS, when I was starting the job search, and then slowly you get better. So David, do you mind sharing a few? I'm thinking of one example, but do you mind sharing some of your kind of fails during the job search that you were able to turn around and improve on?
Yeah, I think the biggest failure that I had was system design, like I mentioned in the past. They basically said something like, imagine you're like working at Twitter, and Twitter has like users and followers and buttons and stuff like that. Like, architect a basic like structure of how that would work from back end to front end. And I just like looked at them with like a deer in the headlights look, and I had an hour to do it, and it was the most cringeworthy experience ever. I was just like, well, you'd like make a model, and you'd probably like draw this thing, but I don't know if that exists in Rails or something. And it was really embarrassing. But I think when you get embarrassed and feel humiliated like that is when you learn where you're weakest at, and you learn that you're going to master that because you never want that to happen again. And so some people view failures as a negative experience. I view them as opportunities to do them more wisely the next time. So, but I had a lot of them. I probably failed, I don't know, 20 to 30, 40 interviews. I only got 2 on-sites, by the way. And just like Timur said, you only need one to get an offer.
Yeah.
So,
And as we're closing up the AMA, can you share a little bit about the compensation package that you got from Amada?
yeah.
You're wondering.
So the average engineer in San Francisco makes about 105,000. I started out at 115 with 11K in stocks, and now I've bumped up to 120, and I'm going on my way to try to get higher than that. There's different ranks in the company, so.
Nice. Congrats, man. And this is all without going to college to get a computer science degree. And it's just I've seen you over the last like year and a half since you moved out, longer now. But I've seen you kind of go through the boot camp, go through the job search, and you've also had your ups and downs because there's a lot of us prepare for the boot camp experience, but then and it's a very structured experience for most of you who will end up doing it. But then once you go into the job search, it's like this unstructured thing where you're not sure if you should be practicing coding problems, making your portfolio better, or reaching out to companies. And the hardest thing is you have to balance all of those things on top of your daily responsibilities. And so I'm going to leave you all with a piece of advice. What we always say is no matter what happens, once you're in the job search, write 5 emails a day to 5 people who work in tech. Okay. And at first it might take you it might take you an hour to find about those 5 people. It might even take you 2 hours, but in a week or two, it'll probably take you 30 minutes, then 20 minutes to write those 5 emails. And as long as you keep writing 5 emails a day, in a month or 2 months, you're literally going to have 300, 400 people that you reached out to. And so now you have this huge snowball effect of companies that you're speaking with. Some are not going to give you a job, but others are like, yeah, you sound interesting, we're going to push your resume through. Others are like, cool, we're actually looking for someone with your skill set. And so if you keep that going, that's the quickest way for anyone to get hired. I'm going to drop the 5 email templates in the chat as well. Those are the email templates that I used when I was in the job search. I know David customized his own, but I think a lot of the stuff that he was writing were kind of based on just writing those emails and following up. And so you can read through them. Obviously, don't copy them word for word, but use it as inspiration to modify it, make it your own, and then keep doing it. Because I mentioned earlier on the call, David agreed to do these workshops once a week. Okay, and so you'll be seeing invites to our follow-up calls where we can go deeper into what tools he used, what was the approach to follow up? How do you tell your story? And we might even get into doing mock sessions so people can actually get to listen to what those interviews look like. Okay?
Yeah, and to add to Timur, I really would love to answer everybody's questions. So if you, make sure to come to the next one because I really want, I enjoy helping people. So sorry for the people I couldn't get today.
Yeah. And thank you so much for joining us and starting to share all of the knowledge that you have on the job search. And I want to say thanks for everyone who's on the East Coast and West Coast who are still up and are on this call. Like I said earlier in the call, the best time to look for a job is not when you need it, but now. And if you don't need a job today, it actually makes those conversations easier when you reach out to people in tech, because you're not reaching out to ask them for a job. You're just saying, hey, I'm a former teacher. Your company does education. I'm interested in education and tech. Can we jump on a 20-minute call? I'd love to ask how you got to where you are today. And most people will take that phone call with you. They'll grab that coffee meeting, and then it just starts. You're just planting those seeds. Over a few months, you'll nurture those seeds. And by the time you're done with your boot camp, you will literally have tech people that you've never met before, that you've developed those relationships with over the previous months, who are going to be those insiders pushing your story to hiring managers until you get hired. So keep hustling, keep attending the workshops. David, if people want to get in touch with you now, what's the best way for them to keep in touch? Twitter, email, LinkedIn?
I'd say email and LinkedIn are best. You can email me at my working. Here, I'll just write all of them.
Yeah, maybe you can drop your email in the chat. And as David is writing his email, take that opportunity to email David. Take the opportunity to email over all of our previous guests who have done AMAs on our YouTube channel. You can find probably now over 100 different AMAs with people who are in tech. So just email them regardless. Email everyone who's on our podcast. The commonality is that everyone who does it, they all want to help others, and they all know what it was like to be outside of tech. And when you're in tech, trust me, we'll have you on our AMA, and then people will be emailing you, and you'll get to pass the karma back to someone else who's behind you. Okay? Cool. So make sure you get the email addresses here and David's LinkedIn. And yeah, great seeing everyone. Let's break in. Let's give David a round of applause. Thanks a lot, David.
Thanks so much, guys.
Take care. Good night, everyone. Great questions. Katie, Wolford, Michael. Take care.
Yeah, you too.